Welcome to the Worker Power Hour radio show, a show dedicated to workers and the labor movement. This is where working people bring the movement to the mic. We talk labor news, uplift worker voices, and fight for fair wages, safe workplaces, and respect on the job, because nothing moves without workers. Now here's your host, Randy Corrigan.
We're back. This is the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan and the Teamsters 1932 Broadcast Network, airing live from San Bernardino on a special edition with our famous Randy Cammack.
Infamous.
He calls it infamous.
Yes.
I call it famous. We're doing a special edition today. We're going to take as much time as we want. It's actually not airing live on the radio. It's airing live right now on YouTube, and then also we're running into a technical difficulty on the streaming side. They're going to get it fixed here in just a minute, and hopefully we won't have any hitches in the giddy up. But with that, we invited Brother Cammack to come on the show. We also have the famous Kathleen Brennan, our president, our amazing and best president on the face of the planet.
Another $100 bills.
Yeah, it's getting more and more expensive as time goes on.
That's right.
But what we wanted to do is really take some time here that's not limited. Every time we've had Randy on the show over the last couple years, we've run into an issue where we run out of time. We run up against, because we're on the live show as far as the live radio show, and we're actually running into someone else's time slot. Today, guess what? We got as much time as we want, and we can run this as long as we want.
Uh-oh.
And so Randy, who has definitely never been a shy about speaking.
Lost for words.
Well, yeah, never been a loss for words. Will have as much time as he wants to work through this. Now, every now and then I might key over to Mark and tell him to cut him off. So this would be interesting to watch Mark have to play between the two of us. Get cut off. So are we live on WPRN yet? Not yet. Hopefully soon. And we'll go from there. We also have a couple live chat spaces to be able to look in and figure out whether or not people are enjoying this conversation. And I've already got some questions come in that we'll be asking a bit later. But Randy, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Randy. I'm honored to be here. It's always an honor for me to be at 1932, a local that's making a significant difference here in the Inland Empire. A local that started up at very difficult times and has transformed into a powerhouse of local unions. It's encouraging for me, as long as I've been around, to see something as progressive and inventive as you've been with this local union. I'm extremely proud to have been any part of some minor mentoring years ago. So I'm just proud to be here. I can, anytime you ever need me, I'll be here.
Well, quit being so damn humble.
Thank you.
We wouldn't be where we are, number one, if it wasn't for you. Number two, you were an example for us to set. And many of the things we're doing, I watched you do for a lot of years. So I appreciate the compliments, but today is not a day to compliment us. Today is a day to talk about some of these things that you have done. The first subject I would like to start with, seeing that it is my show, is a subject that's near and dear to me, and we don't get to talk about much because it's been a while. Bob Molina passed in 1998. And he was your best friend and was the president of the local as you established Local 63 to be a very dominant local union in this country. He was your partner. The two of you were partners in a lot of ways. You guys did some fun stuff running around, obviously.
Have to go off the air and talk about that.
Yeah, right. Probably would. But, we because so much time has passed with Bob, and he has set his legacy and his attitude and presence and so much of what he did. I just want to first say, as I knew him, I know how proud he would be of you. You are now, from I understand it, the longest tenured secretary-treasurer and principal officer in the Teamsters Union. Isn't that correct?
I think so in the United States, certainly in the West Coast. I'm proud of that. Even though some people have tried to make that a shorter stay. And what we do is a political arena. There's always somebody thinking, the guy's too old, he needs to move over. But, I trust the confidence of the members because they're the ones that make the decision as to whether you stay or go. And unfortunately, I'm very, very humbled by the fact that the members have continued to support what we've been doing. And going back to Bob Molina, if you'd like me to reflect on that.
Yeah.
Bob was the epitome of a union representative. And in different times where there was a different type of representation, at least perceived by the members. There was a time when we weren't under government supervision and the laws weren't quite as strict as they are today. And, Bob, he lived and breathed to do things for the members, a lot like you do, Randy. His heart and soul, he would die for a member. That's how he was. And we went through some difficult times, and, he was a guy that could look at him, you'd be looking at Charlie Bronson reincarnated because he was a spitting image of Charles Bronson, only he was 10 times tougher than Charles Bronson ever thought about being. It was a time when the days when we used to wear leather jackets and the Teamsters still had a dark cloud over us. And, we did things in times where you could do things you couldn't do today. And
there were no cameras.
So true.
I
think that's true for all of us.
Yeah,
Statute of
right.
limitations that has long since gone, but he and I became good friends. I first met him many years ago when we merged Local 871 into 467, and we were talking, and I said something about, but my members are this. He says, you never use that word. They're our members. There's never a personal. He says, you can tell things about people when they use the word me. He says, that right away will tell you what kind of person that is. And I never forgot that. And he meant that. He would correct people. You could tell they were self-serving or self-grandizing. And it just, we became personal friends. We were like brothers. We went through a lot of difficult times when I was first starting. I represented rock and sand out on the desert when we had a lot of rock and sand out there.
There's still rock and sand out there. You just not not so much in a truck. Right.
And when Eagle Mountain Mine was open and at the Desert Center, Bob and I
we had the whole place. The Teamsters had almost that whole place, huh?
Well, the Teamsters, the laborers, the operating engineers, there's about 5 unions out there, stationary engineers. So we had different categories of work that was being done. But it was a tough place. Any of the agents all used to carry guns. The rattlesnakes were everywhere when you'd walk around the premises. That place today, when Kaiser closed in the early 80s, or closed the mine, and they closed the mill right after that. It changed the whole dimensions of the desert, and the retirees were moving into Lake Tamarisk, which was right next to the Desert Center. Some of them still live there. I went to a funeral last week of one of my old friends from
That lived there?
Yeah,
Really?
that lived at Lake Tamarisk, because that's where the retirees went.
Right.
And Lake and Kaiser was going to take care of all that for their lifetime. And people lived out there for generations. Their father worked, or a grandfather. It was a housing development of probably 500 homes, and they're still there. It's on the Discovery Channel the other day did did a thing about ghost towns, and they showed a deal about Desert Center and the old Eagle Mountain mine. But
Yeah, that restaurant, everything there at Desert Center. I
movie.
remember when I first started my career, it was a switch point, and that's where we would go catch up with drivers that were on the road. They'd be in the diner, they'd be over there parked off to the side. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little restaurant there, Desert Center itself, coffee shop, all the truckers used to stop. But going back to Bob, he was just so unique in his ability. Employers were scared shitless. I mean, excuse me, but I'm
You
supposed to
actually
say
can
that.
cuss on this one, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But he had that aura about him that he could convince, not just intimidation, just his looks alone would make you think twice about arguing with him, because he didn't have to do anything. It was just his appearance, his commitment to the members that he represented at Stater Brothers and the bakery. It was a tragic moment when he came down with cancer. He fought that until the very last minute. He was a fighter. He did not want to give up. But he will still be a person that's in the minds of people that he represented. Will always remember him. I mean, even to this day, people ask me, "Do you remember Bob Molina?" Well, of course, I can't forget him. We actually, when he became so ill that he knew he was going to pass away, he asked me, he says, "Randy, I love the members." I said, "Where do you want to be buried, Bob?" Because he was a veteran, he was in the Navy. And he said, "Well, I want to be in the park." So we've got a private park at our hall. It's a couple of acres with, stuff for kids, and people use it every weekend. So when he passed away, his ashes were buried in the park, and we have a fountain that's built over where we laid the ashes in. We weren't supposed to do that because it's against the law to do that, but not that we really cared, because back in those days, the law was okay.
Right.
It's just one of those things you casually forget about occasionally. Never be, once in a while I go out and where we have the fountain, a little plaque with a memento about his life. And I think about him. I miss the guy personally. He was like more than family. I always knew, throughout my career when he was alive, that I felt a comfort level because he always had your back, or I had his. We'd go out somewhere, and whether it was a work situation, we dealt with some tough ones. We ran up against the Hells Angels one time. I think I told this story before. We were organizing a Kmart warehouse in Ontario. And the company had actually hired some Hells Angels to come in and intimidate the workers. They were hired as workers, but they really weren't. They were there to
Run
try to
roughshod.
intimidate
Yep.
the folks against joining the union. So we had a little meeting we put together out in Ontario at the park out there, the one you use for your membership appreciation. And we got a group of them showed up, the workers, and then in rides a bunch of the Hells Angels. And back in those days,
Oh, man.
they took one look at Bob, and it looked like a couple of guys had guns and stuff. They were crazy days, but they decided that it wasn't worth what might happen to them, and they left. We couldn't believe it. We thought we were done for. We ended up losing that unit because they really did intimidate the workers, and people, the average worker doesn't want to go through, threats to them or to their
Right.
families, their
Fair.
kids. So they're easily swayed, and it's not worth going to join the union and have to deal with those kind of people on the work side. But
I got two times he chewed my ass, being Bob.
Just do.
Just two. And I mean, it was, and when Bob chewed your ass, you knew you got your ass chewed. Like it was rough. You guys all think I'm rough. No, he was rough. Anyway, twice I was right one time and I was wrong one time, but I felt wrong both times. I can tell you that right now. I remember one of them, I walked out of his office I was like, oh boy, I know I didn't do wrong here, but man, I sure did feel like it. He was super, super passionate about what he did. There's stories of him jumping a fence, jumping fences at his facilities, like one facility, I think it was Staters, they tried to lock him out. They shut the gates. He climbed the fence, came in the back, got in a fight with the supervisor. He's like, you ain't keeping me out of here. Just tenacious, would fight at the drop of a dime. And I don't mean physically fight. I mean in any exchange or whatever he needed to do for the members, he was willing to do. And it always inspired me. Now, most people may not know that I knew him when I was a teenager. And I actually went to school in elementary school with his youngest son, with Bob Molina's youngest son. And so me and his youngest son, Tony, we called him Bucky, were best friends in like 5th grade, 6th grade, junior high. And we drifted apart a little bit in junior high and then came a little closer early in high school. I wouldn't say drifted apart. I moved one of my 50,000 times of moving, but we'd always maintained a close friendship. And then when I got hired at Staters, a lot of people think that Bob's the one that got me the job. Bob wasn't. It was actually Linda who got me the job. And when I got the job there, then obviously I realized he was a union rep. He was the rep at the time I got the job, and then ultimately just a couple years later became president when Randy and him won the election at the local union. But I remember as a kid, this guy running around with Bob, they were hooting and hollering and, all these things he told me I couldn't do in my youth.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, well, anyway, that's a show for another day, but just very strong personality, willing to stand up for what he believed in, willing to fight for it, but also he wasn't uncompromising either. He also understood at a certain point how to get things done. You can't do this job for as long as he did without having that sort of, a regulator on yourself. But for me, I would have done anything for him. And he was just an awesome individual. And I remember one time I got terminated, or one time I got suspended, and I think it was on Thanksgiving. This is obviously before I came to work. Bob called me. Somebody had told him I got suspended at work. I wasn't going to bother him because it was like 8 o'clock at night, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, the day before Thanksgiving. Bob called me and told me to come over to the house. And, the night before Thanksgiving. And he was like, Randy, why didn't you call me? I was like, Bob, it's like, 8 o'clock at night, the night before Thanksgiving. He's like, I don't give a shit. Like, you need to call me. You need to let me know this. We're going to get you back to work. Ultimately, he got me back to work, right? But point is, I mean, he was on all the time and always willing to help. And I got so many stories. I know Randy's got obviously even more, but it had to be incredible to be his best friend and his partner for that many years.
As our personalities were different. He was the more aggressive, and me, I was the more passive. So what we did is, over the years, we always played good cop, bad cop with employers. He'd go in and chew them out, and I'd, wait a minute, let's get this resolved. And through that, we effectively used that as a way of getting to where we needed to be with employers. One story about Bob, when he was close to going, he could hardly walk. I mean, his body had shrunk down to almost nothing. And there was a big issue that happened at Stater Brothers. And Bob got out of bed and could hardly walk and went down to Stater's on his own and just chewed there. Don Baker was the vice president of Stater's at that time. He was recently passed away. Bob had him up the wall. And whatever the problem was, they gave up. And I couldn't believe the kind of courage that it would take. And knowing that you're about to die, and yet you're going to make that sacrifice. It could have cost him his life going down there. And I didn't even know he went. And I heard about it. He got out of bed. It's just like you said earlier, Randy, is the most compassionate person about it, representing the members. And he didn't like people who didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And very critical of people. And we'd sometimes fight back and forth about people who worked for us, whether they were doing the right thing and how they were doing it. But he demanded that people represent the members and in the best possible way, the most aggressive way that they could.
And he would step in and do it himself if he had to. Like, he was not he just was, he's a workhorse. I think another interesting story is there's a 1994 or 1995 picture of you two with President Clinton at the time. And Cammack's doing the political thing, and he's all smiling and shit.
I think I told that story
and
once
Bob
before.
is standing next to him, and in the picture you can see Bob is looking at Bill Clinton, and he's reading him the riot act over the striker replacement, because one of the things that Clinton had campaigned on is that he was going to repeal the striker replacement that clearly Reagan had done in his era. Obviously, the first Bush, was not going to fix that.
Yeah.
And then Clinton won, and he campaigned on it. And so they're a few years into Clinton's presidency at that point. And, in true Bob fashion in this picture, you got Randy playing politics, and, he's got a smile on his face, and you got Bob staring over at the president of the United States, just railing into him about the Striker Replacement Act.
I tell you, he scared the crap out of me because
You got
we
Secret
had an
Service and
opportunity
everything.
Oh,
up
man.
at San Bernardino Valley College. He was visiting, and Clinton in his first term controlled, or the Democratic Party controlled the Congress and the Senate. So his first term, he could basically move any piece of legislation that he wanted. All he had to do was get behind it.
Yep.
So the most important thing at that time for us was the striker replacement bill. I mean, we had lobbied all over for it. So we had this chance to actually talk to him at the Valley College, and I forget who got us in up there. But the Secret Service surrounded him, and Bob goes up and it's got that intimidating look. And he grabs Clinton, and Clinton's very tall, and Bob's about 5'9", 5'10", maybe. And he looked up at Clinton, he's got a hold of his arm, and Bob had a grip on him that could crush your fingers. And he had Clinton like that. He says, Bill, that's what he called him, Bill, are you going to pass the striker replacement bill? And Clinton's looking at him like,
Who's this guy?
Clinton did not know what to say because he's looking at this Charles Bronson guy
Right.
like he's going to kill him. Right then, he won't let go. Clinton's trying to break away from him. And you can see him pull back. And I'm standing there. I said, Bob, we got to go. We got to go. And he says, the Secret Service starts closing in on us. I thought, oh, shit, we're all
Here we
going to
go.
jail. You got the President of the United States won't let go. And finally, I got Bob to let him go. And the Secret Service followed us out the door.
Oh, I bet.
He
Yep.
thought we were a couple of terrorists or something, but that's how he was. He didn't care who you were.
Love that.
So there's a comment here in the chat
that.
that says that Bob came in. He's referring to that time that you're referring to, Randy. Bob came in with his shit kickers on and was ready to kick ass.
Oh, my gosh.
Anyway,
I love it.
It's the epitome of what you would want in a union representative. You could ask for anything more. Some people do the job, and do it, it's a job. It's not, your heart's not in it. Your mind might be, and you might do a fairly decent job. But there are some people, like yourself, Randy, who've got a passion
Yep.
for what you do and trying to make people's lives better. And it was more difficult back in those days. Of course, we were always broke. And so we didn't, our ability to do, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't even have pagers back then. If you wanted to return a call, you had to stop at a payphone. And so it was different times. And, we used to start like 4 o'clock in the morning. And so before we left the office, because guys that worked in rock and sand all started batching out early in the morning. So you had to get out on the job site if you want to talk to them, extremely early. And he'd start calling people at 4 o'clock in the morning. He'd tell them, sometimes they were bogus calls. Some guy, the supervisor, looking at me or something. And he'd call him at 4 o'clock. And the guy'd, hey, man, what are you doing waking me up? He said, I know you wouldn't call me unless it was really important. The guy never called again.
Oh, my God.
But he had a way of dealing. If you were really in trouble, you'd want him on your side.
Yep. Great advocate.
But also, he was quick to tell you that, hey, what you're doing is bullshit. I mean, excuse me, but, he had that demeanor about him, the total honesty. Sometimes total honesty is difficult for people to understand or take it wrong, because not many people can be totally honest.
Or do they want to hear the total truth or the
Yes.
honesty? Yeah. So shifting gears, we could do hours on Bob. And obviously I loved him like a dad, and he was just a great person. And I doesn't go in, a day does not go by without me thinking about him. And when he passed, one of the things I told Randy, I went into Randy's office, and I think I've shared the story with Randy once. I went into Randy's office and said, you know how I felt about Bob. You and Bob are best friends. You now have my loyalty and allegiance as a result of what I believed in him with you. It's passing on to you. And obviously we have been close ever since. And I want to shift gears to the next person, which is Ken Harala. I spend a few minutes, because another great advocate, different style of advocacy, but Ken was a president of the local union after Bob passed, and he ended up retiring. I forget the year off the top of my head. I think it was 14 or 15. He ended up retiring prior to Sam becoming the president. But 15. I think it was 15 or 16, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in there. But Ken Harala, you want to say a few words about Ken?
Well, when Bob died, it was a difficult decision, looking to see somebody who could do something in the same way that Bob did. And it was almost an impossible mission to find somebody that fell in that category. So Ken Harala I'd known for a long time. We worked together at UPS many years ago. And he had that relationship with the members. He was a different approach. A deep thinker. He studied the art of war. I mean, he could actually, he got me reading it on him, but everything he did was to do with the art of war. He was a unique individual, he read continuously. It was great at solving problems. So with a lot of the situations we run into, it's not so much, anymore, after Bob died, that times changed.
Right.
And, it was more in how can you solve the problem? And he was always one who considered the foreseeable consequences of your actions. So if we were going to do this, just strike him, is it going to be good for the members, or it's going to be bad for everybody? And he always thought about that, and he always was a person who could sit down and try to solve problems in a different way than Bob did. But the end result was he was good at working things out, either with employers. I mean, he had his moments where you could light that fire and you'd be sorry you did, because he could go off, but he was very reserved. He had a unique person that, he wouldn't allow a television in his house.
Mm-hmm. For many, many years, yeah.
His kids grew up, all became very well educated, but never had a TV in his home. That was just because he wanted the kids to read. He loved music, but that's the framework of him as a character. Just was perfect for me to say, I think that's the guy that I want to be the president, who can solve problems. And and I went on to have other positions where it required a lot of my time to be involved with the international or joint councils. He was there to take care of business when I was gone. I had a very good comfort level that he was capable of doing that.
Yeah, and you wouldn't find a better, very prep, his advocacy, prepping for a case, representing the members, very diligent, very detailed, very effective. You couldn't find a better advocate in that space. He did such a great job, and did such a great job of representing the local while he was president. Yep.
He had his light side too. He lived up in Devore. Him and his brother had about 40 acres in Devore. They split the 40, each of them had 20. He raised horses up there in the canyon up to get to the National Forest. So he invited me up to his house one time, and he said, well, let's go for a ride. And I used to ride a little bit when I was a kid. Nothing, I'd be sorry to get on a horse today, but unless it was one of those electric ones.
Out in front of
We
the
go up there, we're riding
store.
up the canyon, and this horse throws me. I'm landed up in the ditch, and he's laughing. He's so hard, he couldn't stop laughing. Come to find out, he put me on a horse, is what they call barn sour. It hadn't been ridden. So anybody that got on it was going to get dumped.
Tossed, yeah.
And he knew that.
Wow.
And he set me up, and I'm laying down in the ditch, and he's laughing. And we laughed about that for years. He want to come up and go riding? No, thanks. And years later, he came down with cancer, and he suffered for many years with it. The City of Hope helped him a lot. But he was a fighter all the way through that, in a different way than Bob. A much different, totally different way of handling things, but he could always get the job done. He could always find a way to solve a problem without having, some major consequence to it, because he thought through it. And that's, you do a lot of that, Randy. You think through things as to what's the best approach, whether it be how can we get this problem solved by putting pressure from here or there or wherever, and look at the alternatives, problem solving. And Kenny was an expert at that. And I miss him. We had a different relationship than Bob, because it was like, when Bob died, part of me died.
Mm-hmm.
I never really felt that comfort level of somebody's at my back. And we used to drink a lot and go to bars, get in bar fights. And that's what Teamsters did back in those days, wear our leather jackets and go into bars. And half the time, we ended up in a fight. And Bob was part Indian. If he drank beer, he was okay. But if he had hard liquor, there was going to be a fight. So I always had to stop drinking when he moved to hard liquor. I knew somebody was going to get hit. And then, the bars back in those days, the bar
Randy,
fight was just happening.
It's so funny how 30, 40 years, 50 years, whatever, will make your viewpoint of something so different. You sounded so reasonable back then. Now, keep in mind, Randy wasn't afraid to get into the mix himself. Truth be told, Randy's one of the toughest people I've ever met in my entire life. Like, he comes off, very nice and very, sophisticated, and hey, let's try to talk through this and this and that. But
Right.
but when there's danger, or there's a confrontation, or there's a circumstance or a situation, he looks it dead in the eye, and he's like, let's go. And he's got a calmness about him and a toughness about him that, it's not about grandstanding or trying to scare everybody off. And so with that be known, he forgets that as a teenager, I remember these two, they were rough around the edges. And again, in a time and a space when I was a little more, acceptable, a little bit different. Obviously, they were much younger at the time. But, Randy, it's so funny to hear Randy sound so... Yeah, I would never do stuff like that. He got in a mix-up every now and then. I do want to shift gears, though. I want to get to some other stuff.
Bob would get into it, and he got his butt kicked a couple of times. It was tough, but he didn't care. The biggest guy in the place, Bob would go up and smack him if he said something. And he just had that, and of course.
How many fights started over Coors Light in the bar?
Oh, yeah, well.
Because there was the boycott at the time.
That's right.
And Bob would call everybody out on it, and he
drank Coors in his presence.
He was going to call you out on it.
He would say, he'd send you a Budweiser.
Yeah. He'd buy you a beer first.
He'd buy you a beer and say, you can't drink Coors. That's scab beer. And he got in fist fights over it in bars. But he got in a big fight over in Fontana one time, him and a couple of the guys, and it was after I left. I'd had enough, but I knew something was going to happen. I thought, I'm going to get out of here before they all go to jail. So the beef started with a bunch of guys sat down, were drinking Coors. So Bob goes over and tells him, it's scab beer, guys. You shouldn't be drinking that. You can kiss my ass and all that. So he sent him some beer, and then they sent it back, and then got words between them, and Bob and a couple of other people were with him. And they got in a huge fight. There was about 10 people fighting, and turned out they were cops.
Oh my gosh.
They were off-duty cops.
Wow.
And there's some people that got some permanent damage to their body out of that.
Yeah, he was definitely willing to take the union angle,
Yep.
even there, making sure people understood how important it was to stand behind the workers that were
Correct.
behind the boycott, and especially in that era, the Coors boycott was pretty big. So let's shift gears here. Randy, you were the Joint Council president of Joint Council 92, which in 1999 merged back into Joint Council 42. You were also an international vice president, Western region, and at-large vice president, which means the at-large is over the entire country. The Western region is a regional vice president. And you were the Joint Council president for Joint Council 42 for, I think, 13, 14 years. And you have been a huge impact on so many people across the country. When I'm traveling or doing things and everybody's always asking, how's Randy? How's Randy? How's Randy? Or if they don't know my connection with you, they ask, what local did you come from? Or da-da. I always say that I was birthed out of 63. And then immediately it's, Randy Cammack, how's he doing? Blah, 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 blah. You have an incredible reputation across the country of always being helpful, and one of the things that you've told me you're most proud of is you're most proud of trying to bring people together to make something happen. And a good example would be your leadership at the Joint Council when you were Joint Council 92 president. You took a step back, merged into 42, and then ultimately later on you became president of Joint Council 42. But I think that you want to be recognized, or you're just proud of the fact that you've always tried to keep people working together as much as possible. And I know when we were dedicating the building here, I'd asked you a couple questions, and I had said, what are one of the things you're most proud of over your career and your time? And you had said bringing people together. So first of all, let's talk about those three positions and how much good you did in those three positions, and how much, I'm going to be straight up with you, regardless of who's listening, because there is a shout out to all of you listening live. Appreciate you listening in live. You did more in those positions than anybody that's currently in those positions, first of all, done to this point or can imagine to do. And it's no shot at anybody. It's just you're a different leader than them, and you utilized your position to try to help bring things together, make the organization better. What are your thoughts on leading a significant part of this union for so many years? I think you were the longest standing vice president at a particular point too, at the international.
Thinking back when I was proud of the fact, and a lot of people don't realize, some of that we were able over the years to bring people together and not have any real major differences between people within our joint council, or even at the international. We try to. That doesn't always play out for everybody, but we left, a group of the locals left Joint Council 42 back in the mid 90s.
1994.
About 57,000. It was a major portion of Joint Council 42, almost half of it, because we didn't particularly like the way it was being run, and there wasn't a real chance to change that internally. So we left and got the general president at the time to agree to charter a new Joint Council. We took in Local 104 out of Arizona, the whole state of Arizona with us, and And we tried to do things differently, and not, the original idea was to not charge per capita tax and run it just like a lot of city council where council members aren't paid, the board members wouldn't be paid. And they did try to run it very idealistically. And we ran into some hurdles because there were the people around the ex-joint council and others were trying to work against what we were doing. So in later years, Jim Santangelo actually took over Joint Council 42. And he came to me, he says, hey, Mike Riley, who was the guy in charge at the time, which the one we had issues with, he says, he's gone, he's retired. You know, why don't you think about bringing the members back to Joint Council 42? And I thought, you know, for the good of the members, you know, nobody wants to give up. You know, it was probably one of the second largest, that 92, with 57,000 members. It was probably one of the third or fourth largest joint councils in the country, because most of them are small. And so, you know, it's the right thing to do. It's about bringing people together. And we merged 92 back into 42. And over the years, then Jim Santangelo decided to retire, or we asked him to retire. He got into some personal issues. And the board asked me to take over as Joint Council President. And over the years, we were able to do, I had a board that was really good, a lot of great leaders who were willing to work together. You know, we spent a lot of time trying to, there was a lot of division, you know, with the folks that had split off and came back. There were some bad feelings. But we were able to put all that together. Put all that together, and over the course of years, the 13 years I was there, we looked at becoming the largest joint council in the United States, which we did. And a lot of that had to do with the work that you did, Randy, and facilitating bringing 1932 online. And it couldn't have been done without you and your efforts. And it's grown to be one of the largest locals in the Joint Council. Other than 986, they've merged them folks in. And we reached out to, and you helped us facilitate Local 1699 through relationship with Dennis Hayes and others, and with Katie Lagenstrasse. We were able to convince them, and you played the major part in making that happen, bringing 1699 in to become Teamsters, because they were an independent union. And other unions were trying to, let me take a drink here.
Yeah, that was a time of immense growth in the Joint Council. We actually took it from being the second or third largest into becoming the largest by far after you became the president of the Joint Council. And so your efforts turned Joint Council 42 into the largest Joint Council by far during your tenure. So you should be very proud of that.
Through merging, we had one other group that we were able to bring in.
2010, yeah.
They called me and said, hey, we've got this large group of airline pilots that nobody wants them. None of the other Joint Council, they were, the pilots are pretty independent. And Allegiant Airlines, which is stationed in Las Vegas. I said, we'll take anybody, and whatever their problems are, we'll work on. So we were proud to bring in all the pilots from Allegiant, which is now a separate local union. And they finally just recently hadn't had a contract in like 5 to 6 years.
Wow.
And we kind of helped them work through, and they finally just negotiated an agreement that's probably 8 to 10 years old in getting them. They finally got it done. And the progressive, and Randy, you were my director of organizing for the Joint Council many years, and not just through mergers, but bringing new members in, which you've always been good at, And, we're proud that not just that I should take that credit, because it was a collective effort, as all the things we do that are successful. It's not just one person, it's one person motivating possibly other people to move in the direction which is beneficial to the joint council or to the local union.
True, but I think what's important is if the leader is not on board, it doesn't happen.
Yep.
And I think we have seen this abundantly clear many times in our time. Obviously, you got way more time than I do, but the reality is if the leader is not on board, it doesn't happen. You were on board, and that's how it happened. There's a couple pretty cool questions in the chat here I'd like to ask. One is, what is the proudest memory of being in the labor movement? What's your proudest memory of being in the labor movement?
I think the moment that I think about is many years ago, I was honored by the Friends of Israel. We'd done some work to help what was happening in Israel. These were not like it is today. And in that event, I think Mark was there at the hotel in Los Angeles. My kids flew out, my daughter flew out from Texas, and grandkids, and we were able to sit at the table with the mayor of Los Angeles, and they were so thrilled to see, the chief of police from Hawaii, all the dignitaries who were there honoring me. And the fact that not for me, but for my kids, who have always not been the best of parents because I was entwined in the Teamster business, gone. And, sometimes in earlier days I probably partied a lot. That's putting it lightly. And to have my kids there while I was being honored, and they got a little picture of what I was doing, and they were, they still ask me about that, pictures with some very famous people. That's probably my proudest moment, that my family had a small opportunity to see some of what I've done over the years.
And in that light, you spark a memory here, the work that you did to help the hurricane victims in Houston, then turned out to them having a day named after you in Houston. There's actually a Randy Cammack Day in Houston, Texas, been adopted by the city council, correct?
I'm sorry?
There's a day in Randy Cammack Day in Houston because of the work that you did for the hurricane relief work.
Yeah,
there
it's not that again. I get to take the credit, but
but it took a leader to pull everybody
That's
together
right.
to make that happen.
That's right.
we sent, we have a 40-foot truck we use it for parades and disaster relief, and we were able to send truckloads of relief supplies down to use. We even transported a police car that LA police had donated because their cars got destroyed down there, and they ended up honoring me in Houston as a Randy Cammack. I was shocked.
Wow.
And I had a lot of accolades over the years that I don't look at those as personal, that I want to beat my drum about, because there's always not just me, but there was always, everything we did had a lot of people making it happen that were a major part of what we did that deserved. So sometimes, every time I've ever been given an award, and I've probably got more than I deserved over the years, but it's not taking this for me. I'm taking it on behalf of all of the people who work for me, who work for the members to make it happen. They're the true heroes of any of these events. And I'm just proud to say that I've had some great people around me, Randy, and you're one of them, who made things happen.
Okay.
You know, a lot of people talk
Okay.
big game, but, you know, actually physically making things actually happen. You know,
Let me get.
what you've done here with the training school, people talk about doing that, but actually making it happen,
Okay.
going against the odds, well, probably the only local I know of in the United States
Say so.
that has that kind of program. We've tried it with the Joint Council. We tried a training school, and we ran into trouble with government grants, and, you know, you've been able to get through all those hurdles because you've got a lot of politicians now who respect what you do and would assist in a lot of these things that you achieve.
So here's a question here. It says, please ask Randy what the most impactful contract he's worked on. What's the most impactful contract you've worked on, and why you feel that way?
I think, you know, over the years I've been involved in the grocery contracts for Southern California. Of course, you know, when I started, there was probably double the number of chain stores that there are today. You know, we had Lucky's and Alpha Beta and, you know, just Boys Markets, and I can't even think of all the chains that used to be in Southern California. This recent grocery contract was probably the most significant one in times that are difficult for chain stores now, because there's the unorganized grocery chains that are in Southern California are taking a huge bite. Everybody wants a piece of the grocery industry. You know, Whole Foods, you've got Cardenas, you got Aldi, and you've got the Hispanic markets that are out there, Super, it's just one right after the other.
Everything's eaten at the lunch of the
Yeah, so
grocery
we were
chains
able
there.
to get a contract for our grocery members in Southern California, that, you know, like $4 or $5 an hour in the first year, and, you know, pension money, and we thought we were going to be in a strike. It would have been a horrible strike, but it worked out. And I'm really proud of that because it set a new standard for contracts around the country in the grocery industry. And, you know, the members are happy with it. They voted almost 90-some% in favor of accepting it.
So I got a couple more questions for you. Where did the horse's ass song originate from?
Where's what?
The horse's ass song. Hooray for Randy. Where did that originate from?
I tell you, that
Because we do it now here,
Yeah.
and so, you know, obviously
I don't
I
know if
learned
you-
it from you guys.
That goes back to the days of Bob Molina and myself, and the agents used to get together, and, you know, and we maybe had a few drinks, might have
Maybe.
a few drinks or more than a few drinks, and somebody came up with this little rhyme that said, "Hooray for Randy, hooray at last, hooray for Randy, he's a horse's ass." That little rhyme caught on.
It stuck.
That every time there was a meeting or something, there'd be a group of guys singing that. I remember once I had just been elected as an international vice president. We were in Vegas, and they'd call us out on the stage. They were introducing all the vice presidents in Vegas, you know, Hoffa. And here's all my guys sitting in the front, and bigger than life, and you were part of that.
Nah.
They start
No.
singing. They start singing this "Hooray
That's
for
great.
Randy," as the horses out. The whole, I can tell you, everybody in the place laughed about it. And but I thought, you know,
That's great.
that it didn't. You know, I felt good about it.
Right.
You know, that's
Respect.
those are my guys.
Yep. Yep.
And that was nice. That was a nice tribute. You know, nobody would think that's a tribute, but it was. So we got to whenever we only did it for people we liked.
Right.
We didn't do that for people we didn't like. But if that was you were one of us if we sang that rhyme for you. And we don't sing it much anymore, but
Oh, we do now. So
Yeah, we've inherited it here.
yeah. we carry on the tradition. So I think something I want to point out is you have been part of strikes led against UPS and freight, specifically Yellow, USF, Kroger, specifically Ralph's Kroger, Beverage, 7-Up, UNFI, which led to a first contract, and a lot of these strikes led to first contracts, and then also Amazon. Like, there isn't a longer. I don't know if anybody's got a list this long in their career to have taken on and been part of labor disputes of this level and that many different situations. It's funny because with Randy being who he is and his temperament and trying to resolve things, because that's our job. Our job is to try to resolve things, and ultimately it's to prepare yourself for a fight and be prepared. But in the end, you got to find some resolve, because it doesn't matter unless you resolve the issue. Anyway, point is that sometimes, Randy's too soft, or he's this, he's that, and I point out, like, no one's got this long of a resume of striking all of these companies, and so don't take the kindness for weakness,
Right.
and because the reality is you've never been afraid in the end to pull the trigger. You've always just made sure it's all been done right, so that when you pull the trigger, that you're most likely to succeed, versus being reckless. You've seen many people be reckless with labor disputes over the years, and it turned really bad. You have done such a phenomenal job of being diligent that when you do pull the trigger, you're pulling it in the right way.
Yeah.
How does it feel all these years later to sit back and see that many? And there's a lot more strikes that you did. I'm just putting out some pretty big names here. I don't know of anybody else who's been responsible, who's been a principal officer and responsible for leading that many of them. Yeah, I was with you during all these strikes and helped you manage them. But at the end of the day, you're the one that made the decision to pull the trigger.
One of the things that Bob taught me is, in his demeanor and the way that he dealt with things, is that employers have to know that you're willing to go to the extreme if you need to. But you always have to think about the consequences of doing that. But they have to know that you will do it, that you're not afraid if it comes down to that. So you try to work, with them when they ever sense weakness, and I think that, when people look back and say, well, if you're willing to go to the distance, they'll see that there was a history. Most of these employers look at your history to see what you're about when they're dealing with you. And they know that if you decide to pull the plug, it's not going to be good. So I'm, very hesitant about pulling the trigger, as you said, because you have to look at the consequences. And sometimes people say, why didn't you strike them sooner? Well, it wouldn't have been good for the members. Because sometimes strikes, everybody's, well, that strike's great. People vent the first week, and then the second week when the paycheck doesn't show up, and the strike fund's a little different today than it used to be. But you've got to always think about that. What's the best thing for the members? Not about your ego or getting mad and saying, I'm going to strike you, because it becomes personal. And sometimes it does. These employers make you mad personally.
Right.
You want to go over and slap the dog crap out of them. But you can't do that anymore. And when you use the members, putting them on the street because you're mad,
Right.
doesn't get it done.
Correct.
Put them on the street when
It
you
puts them at
think you
risk.
can effectively change the direction the employer's going in, and you put them on the streets, and that's going to work. We've got the right leverage. We can do things effectively, and that's when you put them. And it's taken me 46 years to kind of think about all this stuff, and there's been ups and downs in everybody's career. You have things that are good and things that aren't so good. We've had strikes that didn't turn out well, but they needed to happen.
Yep.
No matter what. We just had one that lasted 3 years with Bellflower Dental. we just resolved it. The members decided they didn't want to go back to work. But, you know, you have to something, but it needed to happen at the time. And the employer was just so totally unreasonable. There was no way to try to talk to him. In fact, he was an immigrant from Russia, and he had this Putin mentality. It was unbelievably difficult to communicate with him, and it was all just, you know, it didn't like you. He bought the dental company from Dr. Weiland and had no concept of unions, never dealt with unions before. He's from old Russia. He personally was from Russia, not his family. So he had some mindset about labor and that he should have to answer to anybody or make things better for his worker, because that's not what he was about.
Yeah, dictator mentality. I want to remind everybody. I've obviously known Cammack the entire time he's been a principal officer, and I have watched militancy from his perspective. You know, be very, very effective, and it, you know, having different forms of it. Kathleen, you got some questions you want to ask, right?
Oh man, you know, I just going back listening. I'm just sitting here listening because I love to hear you guys talk, and I love hearing about Bob Molina and Ken. And even though I didn't get the chance to know him, and most of our members never did, I feel like we did, knowing you guys, because you guys exemplify everything you guys were talking about with both of these gentlemen. Literally, like this what sitting here in this room right now wouldn't be possible if you both didn't take that leap of faith and convince the powers that be at the international to take a chance on us and organize this local. So first and foremost, thank you both. I feel like we owe a great debt of gratitude to Bob Molina and Ken, and and I know you're very humble about that, but literally this whole conversation we're having now, this contract negotiations that we're in now, are all happening because of you. So thank you very much, and appreciate that. I feel like I've known these two great men, even though I've never met them, just hearing these stories, because you guys both absolutely exemplify that. But, you know,
Kathleen, with what you folks have accomplished here, I couldn't be prouder to say that I had any part in this thing happening in the beginning. You guys have made it unbelievably, you know, not everybody appreciates. A lot of people in the organization don't want to see somebody actually do things they can't do.
Yeah.
It's a lot of jealousy out there, political jealousy, and they're reluctant to recognize the good work that's happening, or the most unusual work. And, you know, when the Janus decision came out,
yeah.
public sector unions around the country lost thousands and thousands of members.
Some of them went out of business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them literally closed up shop. Yep.
Yep.
Some locals closed up shop, not in the Teamsters, but in
Yeah, they did, and there was an expectation that, you know, 1932 was gonna be problematic because you've got all public sector,
Right.
primarily all public sector, and instead of that happening, you've grown by thousands of members since Janus, and that says something that's unbelievable. Instead of going this direction.
Right.
Even though everybody thought it was going to be extremely negative, because some of SEIU and some of the other AFSCME, they lost because they really didn't do what you're doing. You interact with their members, you do things for your members, you represent the members in a way that and you're through what you're doing here today, you know, your broadcasts, you're making them believe in worker power.
Yeah.
Other unions don't do that. They, you know, it's representation from afar. Some of them you have to pay to have them come out. Some of the unions I know about, where representation is all back east, and if you want them to come out, and you gotta pay them to come out. That's why they lost so many members. To see you grow, and the outreach that you've been able to do, and I think about it because, you know, the general president at the time, Hoffa, was not in favor of doing this.
Right. Exactly.
He was very anti, because he had a relationship with SEIU at the national level, and he didn't want to interrupt that or whatever was going on back there. And he resisted and resisted. We finally convinced him that this was an opportunity to gain thousands of members that they hadn't been able to organize, but you could bring these folks in and create something good.
Right.
And finally, he caved in, but he fought it. He didn't want to win. There was a challenge through the arbitration over from the AFL-CIO with SEIU. He wasn't in favor of spending money on fighting that.
Right.
So the fact that he finally caved in, a lot of people pressured him, myself and others. And it turned out, I think Dennis Hayes represented us, or you folks, and we kicked their butt. And 1930 became what it is today through a lot of hard work and good things that you folks are doing. So I look back and I'm proud. That's just,
Yes.
I'm extremely honored that you have my name on the wall of this building. That's probably one of the greatest honors I've ever had, looking back to the Jewish labor movement thing that I was proud because my kids were there. But the day we were here and you unveiled that sign, I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. I was deeply touched. I will never forget that moment because I really had no idea.
Really?
None.
Oh my goodness.
I know he's got it on a rope where if he gets
Oh, it
kicked out
flips.
that may
It flips, yeah.
He
It's
just
got a
flip
button
it.
there. When I'm mad at him, I flip it over and it says someone else.
It says Veneros on the back.
What other questions do you have?
You know what? It's going back to that. I mean, again, that wouldn't have happened if you didn't have that great relationship with Hoffa and you weren't a great leader, both of you guys. I mean, literally, just can't even thank you enough. And that your name absolutely needs to be on that building and will be there forever because this building wouldn't exist, Cammack, if it wasn't for you. 1,000%. Everybody knows it. And all those people talking smack out there, do you have a name on a Union Hall anywhere? I don't think so. So
Yeah,
keep it quiet.
Have you led a strike?
Yeah.
Have you organized workers?
Yeah.
I always find it funny, these people, these naysayers that throw these jabs or talk negative, like or have all these crazy opinions. Like, you've never done
have you done?
any of this work.
What have you done?
Any
Yeah.
of this work.
Oh, yeah.
And especially right now, as crazy and as difficult things are.
Yep.
As is listening to people second guess what needs to be done in these
Exactly.
types of moments, especially if they've never organized workers, never gotten a first contract, never negotiated a renewal, never actually led multiple strikes or even one strike. That's just opinions. It's social media gives everybody a microphone now.
Yeah.
Anybody can have an opinion. Doesn't mean it has any value. And I think that brings us to this really good question on here. I just don't want to miss it, but I'd like for you to ask some more questions, Kathleen. Is Randy, someone's asking, how do you see the labor movement? How do you see the labor movement in 5 years? What's your vision of what the labor looks like in 5 years?
I think sometimes what this administration has done with doing things that actually take away the rights of members, in the public sector, whether it be no matter which part of the public sector that they've disenfranchised, the right to have a voice in their workplace. I think that becomes things like that, with the National Labor Relations Board being an employer organization, and all those things cause a resurgence in how members feel there's a need to have a union. I think we're going to see growth like we've never seen before. Because the more things go negative towards working people, and it couldn't be in a worse situation right now. With the laws they're trying to pass and have passed that tie the hands of people in the labor movement. It wasn't too long ago they were trying to pass a federal law that made any activity on a picket line a federal offense, which means somebody, members get a little.
Yeah, someone gets upset, throws a rock. Right.
People, a lot of emotion if you're on strike and your job's at stake, and after a while your family begins to suffer because there's not a paycheck. A lot of anger. People do things to turn around and make that a federal offense.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
would be, I think you're going to see the labor movement, a lot of attention on labor right now. It's, hopefully we can get past as far as the Teamsters itself, if we get past the government oversight, that we prove we can take care of our own business, which we should have been doing all along. I think you're going to see a resurgence. Like I said, you're going to see people wanting more and more to join a union, to get representation.
I agree with you. That attack creates the need, right? That attack creates a need. In other words, them coming at us creates a need for it to happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Randy. It's, we're seeing people contact us. You've got a better outreach system through the digital signs and stuff around, and attract people go by. Say, God, maybe I should join a union, and they're thinking about what's happening in their workplace, their inability to speak up. People are afraid of what's happening on their work site. They can't speak up because you don't have anybody to represent them. I think you're going to see that. And things kind of go like up and then down, and we're in that down period right now. Got an administration that doesn't like unions. People around them don't like unions. They're employers oriented, employer supported. And people are seeing how that things that are out there happening to average people. It causes people to think, I need somebody to represent me. I can't do this on my own.
Right.
I think we're to see good things. Sometimes it takes bad things to cause things good to happen.
Yep.
You got any more questions, Kathy?
To all the young people, we have a lot of younger members, a lot of Gen Z coming into the organization. What would your advice be to them in regards to, they're listening now and they're hearing these stories and they're hearing what you went through and all the struggles, and the struggles now are a lot different. But what would be your best advice to somebody who's like, I think I can do that. I think I someday want to be the principal officer or president of this local, or I want to be a leader. And what would be your best advice to somebody like that who's just coming into the workforce?
Could you kind of repeat that, Randy?
Yeah, what's your best advice to the youth getting involved in labor, and what should they focus on?
Right.
Is that correct?
Right. Yes. Those that want to become a leader like yourselves, and
Go over that again. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Put the earphones on, Randy. If you put the earphones on.
Oh, okay.
What you see, words of advice to the younger generation on their involvement in unions and how they can participate and be more effective leaders to help the union grow.
Right.
If you're talking about people who are already in the
labor
movement, what should they do to make the union more effective, or people who are not?
Yes.
Right.
No, people that are in the labor movement, but young.
But young.
There's a host of people that just aren't involved.
Right.
And getting them involved was a very difficult proposition. And I think that's the responsibility of the leadership, to find ways to communicate, make them feel that they're worthy. We've been looking at some ways an outreach to bring people more and help us organize, get them more involved. The average member isn't.
Right.
We have union elections where 5, 10, 15%, 20% probably the average.
Right.
In the international union, they have 1.2 million, 1.4, whatever the number is right now. And 1 million people don't vote.
Right.
So that's problematic. When you look at that, you say, that's something you've got to really change in the future.
Right.
And how do you get those people involved? The public sector, probably more involved because their livelihood depends on what happens in the legislature, whether it be the city, county, or the state. You've got a situation where you have people that see the need to be involved. The average worker doesn't see that, and it's our responsibility and maybe our failure on our part to have been able to communicate. We've tried different things that really didn't work. We tried new member orientation, where we bring members, we even offered to pay them a couple of $100 to come to an orientation. We could talk about the union, talk about your responsibility to be part of the union, come to membership meetings. And, you know, you go around the country, a lot of locals have 10, 15, whatever their quorum is. People just don't show up.
What was your aha
The
moment?
largest local in the United States has a membership meeting with 30 people, 20-some thousand members.
What was your aha moment, like as a young man when you got involved in the union? Like your moment when you were like, you know what, this is where I need to be. I need to get more engaged. Like, was it because people ask me that all the time, like, what got me involved? What was my moment?
You know, I wish I had the real answer to that.
I understand.
You know, we all struggle with that in leadership positions about membership involvement. You know, we talk about, you know, you reach out, you do a lot of things.
No, the question was, when was your aha moment? In other words, you knew you wanted to be part of the union. You wanted to be part of the engagement. I think that's what you missed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's my bad ear.
You had new hearing aids on.
This is the one I turn to my wife when I get home. Oh, you said what?
You're lucky she's not here today.
Well, he can hear every word she says.
If you sit over here, I got to hear you. No, I'm sorry. Would you repeat the question?
Yeah. What was your aha moment when you recognized that you wanted to be part of this? In other words, that the labor movement kind of caught you when you
How did I
recognized.
first get involved?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to, you know, of course, you probably know the history, and that really didn't play a big part in it, but my grandfather was a Teamster member back in the 30s and 40s. And my dad was a Teamster organizer for a while, Local 578. My grandpa was at 542, which became Local 36. He was in the construction. But that really didn't influence me. I worked for UPS in Pomona, and we had some issues there. The business isn't really. He was a freight guy. He didn't know the first thing about. Of course, there wasn't a lot of UPS in that local, and you know, we got more and more involved in some things. There's a story. What really set me off was, you know, back in those days, I used to ride a Harley to work. I had a big Fu Manchu, and UPS was very strict about appearance standards. Fu Manchu didn't work. Your mustache had to be perpendicular with the corners of your mouth. No beards, no shorts. You know, it was a different world. And it came out one day, and they wanted to take we had done so many safe driving days or something. They wanted a group picture because we'd won some award. And I said, look, I don't really want to be in the picture because I know somebody's going to see that guy with the.
Oh, no.
So they forced me to go in the picture. The boss said, hey, Randy, come on. And because that was a good work, right? Probably one of their best producers at that time. So they really didn't mess with me. And when somebody saw the picture, the editor and somebody else, some management person, were like, we can't publish that. Well, we got to put it. So they took, and back then they didn't have Photoshop. They took white out to my picture.
Wow.
And it obliterated my face. They whited out most of my face, not just the beard. Or there wasn't a beard, just down the
Yeah, it's a goatee that drops down and the center's
yeah.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah, no goatee. It was just a
Long
Fu Manchu
mustache.
type thing. And it wasn't that radical. So they whited out my face, and they sent that out in a newsletter. They put out a magazine called Big Idea. It went all over Southern California. And people were calling me up that I knew, saying, Randy, did you get in an accident or something? Your face looks like a mongoloid, or, what's happened to you? And I didn't look, because I didn't read that stuff. And I got so mad at what they did, and I just, turned me and said, that didn't have guts enough to come up and say, cut my mustache.
Right.
but they would put me out and embarrass me in front of everybody. And then there was an incident right after that. I used to be a cartoonist. I did caricatures and stuff when I was younger until I hurt my wrist and couldn't do that anymore. But I won an award for best cartoon, caricature. I still have it in my garage. And the prize was dinner for 2 or 4, I think it was 4 maybe, at any restaurant that you pick. So of course I picked the most expensive restaurant in Los Angeles. I can't remember the name of it. It's not there anymore. Like dinner was $100 back then. That was a lot of money.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I tell them, here's where I want to go. Well, no, there's a $50 a person limit. They never said that.
Wow.
Anywhere I said that, the deal said any. So I, after that, the guys elected me shop steward, and the guys I worked with. After that, they did that thing with my face. Everybody in that center, including the management guys, all grew Fu Manchus.
Oh, that's awesome.
Every driver in that location grew a mustache
That's great.
and let it grow.
Solidarity.
illegally.
Yep.
And they came out one day, and a big shot came out. He says, told the boss, the boss grew one too, the management guy. So what's going on? I said, got the best producing guys in the United States, and you're going to come out, what are you going to do, fire all of them? I said, one, you're going to fire them all. And we got a really unique camaraderie, and it really encouraged me. I ran for vice president of local back there in 871. Of course, I lost, but that was my first involvement
Wow.
in losing. My only time I ever lost. And I look back at that and say, I ran against the wrong people for wrong reasons, and got caught up with something. But that really, the fact of seeing what people can get done
Right.
together, I couldn't do it on my own. I could be mad forever and they could care less. But when you take a whole group of folks who exercise solidarity, that told me something. That's how you work. That's how you get things done. And I couldn't never stop being involved after that.
So people are pointing out here the Easter egg hunt, the old chili cook-off, the Thanksgiving giveaway for the turkeys, the beautiful park behind the local. There's all these great things that Local 63 is known for. And for anybody that's not seen the Easter egg hunt, the Easter egg hunt is this incredible situation where hundreds of kids swoop up thousands and thousands of eggs in 9 seconds. It's the fastest vacuum cleaner you've ever seen on the face of the planet when the kids are all held back. And
You don't want to get in their way.
yeah, you don't want to get in their way. And, but as we wrap up the show, Randy, what do you just want to say? You've done all these, I know you keep saying, you keep getting this kind of humble moment.
Right.
You've done a lot for a lot of people. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands, if not more, that have been positively impacted by the things that you've done. And then they're standing like the park behind the local. You've got, institutions, you've got actions and events, that are being mimicked in other parts. Obviously, we're mimicking a lot of things that you did. You've just done a lot for a lot of people. We appreciate you coming on. What do you want to close the show out with? Any words? We won't cut you off as long as you want to talk.
Let me tell you, you brought up a chili cook-off. We've had the opportunity to do some really good things with the members, and the members were always really great about it. The chili cook, I'll tell you a little funny story. Myself and another one of the agents, we were real strict about the chili had to be cooked there. You couldn't bring in somebody else's chili and hope to win. So me and happened to be Bob Doss. We bought some canned chili in the big cans. We went to one of the stores and picked up these big cans of chili. And now everybody else, we had guys out watching them, that all the preparation, they had to get their hours early, put it all together. And ours was canned. We dumped in this and that and just garbage. when they came time to come around and judge, ours became the winner. And we had to turn it down. I never laughed ever think of that chili cook-off.
People spent hours. Hours and hours in prep and all this stuff. I remember this.
Some jazzed up canned chili, and they said ours was the best. It was kind of, and we turned the prize down. We said, no,
great.
this is, and then we told people this was
Just wanted to test it.
Yeah, dude, we were just playing to see what would happen.
And then
I love it.
Right.
That is great.
Got to do a live shout out for a few people here. One is Sammy from 952 listening in. You got Sammy from 952 listening in live. You got a number of people listening in live from all over the place. Colton Teamsters are listening in the house. And so, anyway, somebody just talking about how they went to a wedding at the park behind the local just here recently. So, anyway, just putting thanks to you. What do you want to wrap the show up with? It's yours.
Well, I just, for wrap up, I just want to thank all the members over the years. 60 years I've been a Teamster. 46 years I've been in office at Local 60 through 871 for all the locals that have merged in. The members have continued to support what we do. Randy, you played a big part in that over the years, and I wouldn't be remiss in not recognizing that. I know you don't like that, but it's a fact. It's the members who make us what we are. If we don't have their participation and cooperation, and with not as many people as we'd like to see involved, obviously, but the ones that are involved have continuously supported their events that we do. Going back through the chili cook-offs, and many years we sent packages to the troops over in Afghanistan and to the SEALs, and then we took on for many years the giving gifts packages to battered women's homes, old cell phones and things that you never actually got to see the ladies involved, because they never want anybody to know where they're at, because they're still that continuing threat to those folks. But it was really a good feeling to do that, and the members would come down and help us pack the packages and send them off, and then years later we'd have people show up and say, I got one of those packages. Wow. Nothing like having somebody come up. We sent packages to a group, a whole unit in Afghanistan. And we had one of the soldiers come back to our membership meeting to thank us for how much that meant to them. Because some of those kids don't have families. Yep. They go in and they have troubled lives. They, whatever reason, and to get something from a Teamsters Union and have somebody come back and thank you, that's the greatest part of my life, is seeing some folks seeing that the unions are not what they're made out to be, that they're corrupt and dishonest, and there are people spend a lot of time on social media trying to convince people that. Are we able to do everything that everybody would like us to? No, we can't always do that. But we try our very best, always continuing to make things better for the folks that have us represent them, and we're proud to do that. Proud for the last 46 years I've had the opportunity to do that.
Kathleen, anything you want to say?
Just thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of the 16,000 plus members' lives just here locally that you've helped change for the better, and for taking a chance on us and pushing for us to become this amazing local. Just thank you really doesn't cut it, but you're appreciated, and I know you've changed hundreds of thousands of lives over the years, and just thank you for being you and for showing us through your passion, both of you, that we can get things done by just getting our head down, get ready to work, stop tearing people apart, get busy building, and you'll be fine. As long as you're continuing to do the work to try and help improve the lives of workers, you're never going to go wrong. So thank you both for doing that and showing us by your leadership.
Thank you, Kathleen. And Randy, thank you for coming on and sharing some of these stories. And, we, believe it or not, we're an hour and a half into this. And I also want to remind everybody that Randy served his country too.
He sure did.
And his career is so long in labor, and he's done so much in that space that he also served his country. And
Yes, he did.
you've done so much and sacrificed so much to help so many people out. We all appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate you coming back, and I know you're willing to come back anytime. We'll have him back on again. This is the Worker Power Hour with Randy Corrigan on the 1932 Broadcast Network. What a great show.
Yep.
Thanks for being on, Randy. Take it away, Mark.